This week in Module 2, we're going to be covering chapters 3 and 4. On the 9th, we are going to have a split presentation of Chapter 5, which is still part of Module 2, and Chapter 6 to kick off Module 3. So going to get the majority of the content for the discussions as well as chapter assignments this week. Give you more time to work on your individual project. But on the 9th, we're going to finish off Module 2 and introduce Module 3 prior to your November 15th deadline of assignments. So this week with the module, the theme is going to be identify the relationships between esport and social areas. We're going to be looking at tactic and strategy, both as an individual as well as a team member, and furthering into that strategy on team-based approaches and values. So first thing to look at and think about are creating a variation of approaches, strategies, tactics to competition, gameplay training, and all that. The slide here shows a mix of having a singular approach. Yeah, it's awesome if you master a certain area, but if you go all in on a singular route, once the opponent figures out the strategy that you have, what else are you going to do? So with that, some teams say, well, you know what, we can't just go all in on this one route. Let's create a variety. So let's go 5, 6, 7 different strategies. If this were to happen, we're going to do this. If this were to happen, we're going to do this. But if you wear yourself too thin, you're not going to become well versed in a single one. So yeah, you might get a little farther in the competition or the activity, but you're not going to take a grasp on anything to the level that you would have if it was more concentrated. So with that, the ideal route has more of a selected approach. Maybe you have a plan C, a plan D, but let's focus in on these 3 or 4 core areas. So that way you can still have concentration on the top 2 tiers. This is how I'm going to go about it. Here's a couple backups, and let's just ingrain that in our way of thinking. So we'll have a few approaches, well versed, compared to jumping off the deep end and having, a ton of strategies versus singular. So the ideal route is a little more targeted in that sense. From there, expand a little deeper. Plan C, great way to initiate counter strategies. So if certain challenges come about during the competition, it's a nice way that you can have a couple tactics blended together. So from that plan B and plan C, pushing those different level of perspectives can really challenge the competitors and give them a harder sense of how to read you and overcome maybe their one singular or couple defined strategy. With these multiple plans, they do require a lot of attention, a lot of focus. So that first example that we had, if you're looking at that singular route, those other strategies combined should have as much or more time dedicated than that single path. Also, when you're going through competitions, when you're going through just training, your gut feeling is very important as a gamer. If you are tested in it, if you have played it a few times, if you have a hunch, if you've understand where your skills are the strongest, follow that gut feeling, follow that intuition when choosing the strategy and path ahead. So with that is you have this hunch, and then things are going to change. You're going to have to adapt over time. There are 2 different terminologies that I want you to understand. So first off, a modification, you have that same structure, right? The foundation is consistent, but you're going to adapt over time. You're going to have some mods. You're going to choose a couple variables that follow that same belief, follow that same path, but they might just take you down a few different paths. The alternatives would be more of that varied plan. It's like, okay, this didn't work. We are going to flip the script and go a different route. So an alternative is a much more revitalized alternate plan than making a couple adaptations that follow that same principle belief as modifications do. When looking at the development of these strategies, there's also three key areas that your approach can be split by. You got to think about the energy requirement, the technical complexity, as well as how much teamwork is needed in these different areas. So when developing that plan or those different plans, think about how that can vary. If it is more of a technical approach is needed, maybe you're going to have a singular person taking the lead on that, so the teamwork isn't as much of a focus. Or if it is team heavy, you might have less of a technical approach coming into play, but more of a strategic route. So with that, this is just an example of how one plan could differentiate from another. But those are three areas you really want to figure out based on how the team dynamic is and how you need to approach different situations. Other mental strategies that excuse me. So other mental strategies are, you can't just stick to the script. You gotta look at things a few different ways and use levels of deception. If you go by a specific plan, a specific route the whole time, you're not fooling anyone. They can probably predict what you're going to do based on your habits in that game, as well as other tournaments that you've participated in that your competitors may be aware of. So 3 different terminologies that the book presents. First off, dragon under ice. This is something that is going to catch the opponent off guard. You might throw an alternative out there that just doesn't make sense. They didn't see it coming. And this is a nice way to catch the opponent off guard because it breaks the theme of what you're doing. So having not necessarily a backup plan, but built into your strategy, a component that of deception or of the unknown could really help fluster the opponent when bringing that to light. Ghost with the mask, maybe you're not showing your approach from the get-go. You're taking things for what maybe to you that plan B or plan C strategy from the beginning. Then you flip a switch and plan A is delivered. So that way it's just, you're hiding what you're really going to do. Kind of a nice tactic. So you can add that power later on to the game for that key plan compared to shifting away from that plan as you go along. And then dangling live bait, pretty simple. You're just trying to think ahead of the competition, luring them into a trap, and then exposing some of their weaknesses within. Other things with tactic and strategy, you got to initiate action over and over. If you fall into a passive role, it may be challenging to break through. If you are showing the not necessarily aggression, but if you're just being active, if you are leading the charge throughout and you're going at it different ways, it's going to overwhelm the opponent. They can't just be on the defense the entire time and succeed. Yes, you hear in traditional sports, defense wins championships. Well, in esports, you got to be aggressive. You got to be out there, and you got to wear down the opponent with that over time, and just continuing to deliver action to action to action is a good way of doing that. Throughout this too, continue to target their weaknesses. Where do they appear to be flustered? Where where they losing momentum when you continue to attack. So with this too, it's like, well, you know, you're going about it, you're game planning, you see that they're succeeding in these areas. Don't take on those strengths head on. Go after those weaknesses. Force them into a hole that they're unable to get out of. Through this, let's say you're going back and forth in a battle, going back and forth in a competition, a game, or even in practice. When it gets to that stalemate, it's very challenging to break out of. In chess, you know, a stalemate, hey, game's over. Head to head, you just can't really go anywhere with it. In this, sometimes you just need to pause, step back if the game allows for a breaks, talk to the team, figure out where you went wrong and what you can do to overcome it. Going back to our last presentation, it is okay to take a breather, relax, get your mind out of the game for a minute so that way you can come at it from a new angle, returning from a break. From there, we start getting into that whole teamwork dynamic and understanding core values. So, one big thing I want all you to do when reflecting on the text on the slide is what are your drivers as an individual? What are your values that make you who you are? I know a lot of employers, when you are applying for jobs, a lot of companies, JC included, has values listed on their website. These are the key things that they stand for as an organization. So you need to figure out internally, what are those drivers for you? These are examples of a few aspirations, and you know, other things could include trust, teamwork, you know, for here, patience. For gamers, these are a lot of things that come into play. So when you are growing that team and bonding as a team, it is so critical to understand the values of your teammates, how to work with people from different values and different mindsets, but also what are you trying to accomplish as a team? Where are you going to succeed? What are the values that you all have together that you need to work towards as you progress? Uh, and with this too, it's like your growth. That's gonna come from those values. What is the story that you want to tell over time? For me, with my values, I have those ingrained in the way that I do work, the way that I build friendships, the way that I communicate. There are intrinsic drivers that help me get to where I want to go. And if I stray down paths that don't really make sense, gotta step back and be like, is this really what I'm trying to accomplish? Is this who I am? Is this what I believe in? So internally, it's important to understand that. And just like I shared on the previous slide, as a team, you got to understand what that common goal is. How are you going to work towards that common goal by following those beliefs? From here, it's also through that growth, understanding how are you going to overcome differences together. It's good to have balance. There's no perfect team out there in the world. You're going to encounter challenges along the way based on your egos, based on your personalities. When someone struggles in a certain area, what are you going to do to lift them up? Are you going to do something more tactical and strategic wise to balance out where your strengths may lie within the game? Are you going to go more on the side of instilling confidence, supporting them, minimizing the stress of the situation? There's different routes that could be handled in esports compared to focusing on the failures. There are ways that you have to lift your colleagues up, or not your colleagues, your team members up, to get them over the hump in different ways. So then through your growth, the ego comes into play too, in terms of that, and ego might be a key barrier for you to get past certain humps, to get past certain stages in your own development. For me, I have a pretty strong ego with some things that I do, and it's important for me to put that in check sometimes. While I have a very vocal approach to situations. I can be a little overconfident at times, but then I have to step back and understand why. Why is this situation? Why am I approaching the situation this way? What do I need to do differently? So when you look at this chart, thinking about a champion's mentality, it's always about optimism. How can I improve? What, can I improve upon? Should I be doing things a different way? And this is where your personal ego can be a barrier. It's like, I've trained to do it. I've been training to do it this way. This is how I think. This is how I operate. And if you work your way down that funnel, you're not going to progress upwards where if you just got past your own mental barriers, just, it's important just to think about, the goal that's in sight and how your values can get you there and how you can develop over time compared to being stuck in ruts when challenges do occur. Regarding competition as well, it's important to talked about this before, but it's important to watch what your competitor is doing. If they have videos available, if you see them, if you've played with them in different events, if you've competed in different events, you're all, working towards the same goal in the world of esport. So it's not necessarily going to help by attacking them, but by studying them. How do they think similarly to you? How are they approaching situations differently? That's a good way to expand on your own skills by understanding the competitor. Going back, you're not going to go target them, and I know they're very good at this, so I'm going to destruct, I'm going to take head on their strengths and their immediate past successes. You got to figure out ways around to sneak up on them and go after their weaknesses through gameplay. Other things, based on the ego and based on some key terminologies from the text, flaming is when you attack and blame others by not looking at yourself. It's easy to blame others when your team fails. Your ego pushes you to do that sometimes. It's like, hey, that's not my fault. You should have done this. You should have done this. Make sure you are not that member of the team. Make sure you instill this enthusiasm, positivity in others through these challenges. How did that happen? All right. So, and the final thing here, loyalty is key in all jobs, in all classroom settings, in esports. It is important to build camaraderie. So much of what we talked about in this lesson is the sense of value, the sense of communication, positive reinforcement. So through all this, your team is your family in the esport arena. So make sure that you are the vocal leader, the strategic leader to generate energy and positivity as you go along. So if you have questions, feel free to participate in the chat on Wednesday morning or Thursday afternoon. Happy to help you out, and feel free to refer to this as well as the presentation if you have questions on your assignments.